In this lesson, we're going to take a look at a couple of special attributes that are going to be found inside most of 3ds Max's lights. Alright, so to illustrate this, we're going to take a look at this particular scene. So let's come in and actually add in a light. And it can be any kind of a light. For demonstration's sake, we'll just use a standard light. And maybe just a target spot. There we go. We'll drag this out, get this positioned in our scene. Oops, let's go back here. There we go, this should work out pretty well. Take a render at what we have right now. Okay, so this is what we are looking for. Now what we want to do is specifically take a look at a couple of special parameters that are found on these different types of lights. So let's go to the Modify panel. And if we take a look underneath the Advanced Effects, you can see we have a couple of these kind of inconspicuous looking controls and parameters. One of these is the contrast. So what this will do is, as this contrast gets higher, what it'll try to do is sharpen up the lines between these illuminated areas of an object and the unlit areas. So give this just 1 second to render. And you can really see this effect, especially on this little teacup. So if I zoom in on this and re-render, right, you can see that that contrast is really very, very high, and it kind of gives it a little bit more of a kind of a cartoony feel. Alright, so let's go back to my light lister, and let's select this spotlight. Alright, so in addition to that, we also have this Soften Diffuse Edge, which really kind of does the opposite. It'll try to come in and soften this as much as possible. Now, it's a little bit difficult to see the difference between this, so let's just render out a region. Let's take this and dial the spinner down. I need to make sure I turn off this edit region before I can actually move that. There we go. So again, it's a little bit difficult to see, but you can see how by increasing this diffuse soften, it actually tries to kind of smooth some of this stuff out, and it actually introduces a little bit of extra darkness a lot of times. So I don't very often find myself having to use these particular parameters, but if you do need to access those to either sharpen up the contrast or to kind of help spread that and diffuse that out a little bit more, that's where these can be found. And again, these are on the lights themselves. Now, two very important parameters that are just below that are the ability for a light to both have diffuse light contribution and specular light contribution. So we can independently turn these on or off. So if I disable the specular contribution and re-render, we should now see everything completely flat shaded, no specular lighting whatsoever. Alright, and a lot of times that can be very important if you have just a light in your scene that you want to be able to cast just a little bit of a spill light, but you don't necessarily want to see any kind of a specular highlight from that. You can just simply turn off the specular checkbox, and there you go. Now you don't have to worry about any specular highlights coming from any of these extra kind of fill lights or spill lights that you may have. Now on the opposite end, we can actually turn off a light's diffuse contribution and have it only contribute specular light into the scene. So in this situation, any objects that have any kind of a specular highlight, we can now see just the specularity. Right? So again, you may have a light in your scene that you don't necessarily want to contribute any extra light into your scene, but maybe you want to use it to just give a little bit of extra highlight to some of your objects. Well, you can just turn off this diffuse checkbox, and there you go. Alright, now just below that we have the ambient only checkbox, which when you turn that on and re-render, we should now get something that's completely flat shaded. Right, so no shading, no highlighting, no specularity whatsoever, just 100% flat shaded information. Right, and this can be useful for compositing purposes. So if you need to be able to composite a flat color pass over something else, this is a very quick and easy way to be able to achieve that. Alright, so just below that we also have one last parameter that I want to look at before we wrap up this lesson, and that is this projector map. Now we can use this to actually project some kind of an image through the light source itself. So if I define some kind of a light map, So I'll turn on the map so that it uses something, and then we'll click on this little box. We'll plug in a bitmap, and now we can plug in any kind of an image. So it can actually be anything at all. In our case, we'll use something like a tree gobo, and you can see it's just a black and white image. But what we can do with this is the applications for this very quickly start to become apparent whenever we start to plug in something like a black and white image into this. All right. So when I render, this becomes a very quick and easy way to kind of create the effect of some kind of an object that is maybe blocking the light. So in this situation, we actually have kind of a window type geometry. So let's actually come back and take this spotlight, and let's go back to the spotlight parameters on this. Let me start to raise this up a little bit. There we go. That might make this a little bit easier to see. And in this situation, we've created the effect of light that is spilling through a window. And right now it's a little bit difficult to see, so I could always come in and maybe add some kind of a secondary light in here. But what this can do is, rather than actually having to set up a piece of geometry to block the light for us, we can just very quickly add in this gobo effect. So we use this map that's plugged into this spotlight. And once we render this out, you can see how it creates the effect or the illusion that we have kind of a window set up somewhere in our scene, that light is passing through it, and maybe somewhere outside we have this tree with these leaves and all these other things. Now, the downfall to using something like that would be that we would actually have to use this geometry that is going to obviously start to impact our render time. So by just plugging in this black and white image into the map or into the projector parameter of this spotlight, we can just very quickly and easily kind of create the illusion and kind of fake that effect. All right, so that's a look at some of these specialized parameters that can be found on these different 3ds Max light types. All right, so this will now bring us to the conclusion of our Introduction to Lighting training. So as you can see, we've had a chance to cover a lot of tools and topics over the course of the last couple of hours, and we've seen how we can put these concepts to practical use along the way. So we've also seen how we can use some of the different light types very efficiently and using some of the different shadows within Max. We've seen how we can create realistic lighting effects such as light source glows and simulating indirect illumination using radiosity and the light tracer, as well as many other lighting tools and concepts along the way. So now that you understand how these tools can be properly used to add realistic light to your scenes, now you're ready to begin adding things like mental ray into the mix to start adding a whole new level of realism to your lighting. So to continue your education and expand your skill set, I encourage you to visit us online where you'll find all of the latest announcements. Built on educational values, Digital Tutors started with a simple vision in mind: to help new and experienced artists become more productive by learning new software and production techniques. We've been a leading online resource for free video-based training and have been instrumental in aiding millions of artists on a daily basis. Learn more about the multitude of training solutions we offer for various areas of the production pipeline at digitaltutors.com.